in general. So the
Pause. Those clips are from my previous video called How Humanity Could Have Won the 7-Hour War in Half-Life 2, and well, I talked about what they could have done and more. However, as one viewer pointed out, I didn't really go into much detail apart from surface level stuff, and that's true, especially about cities. So, in this vid, I'll dive into how General Dickus, a personification of me, would organise city defences. Let's dive right in. Also, thank you a lot for the 31 subs. If I could smooch you, I would, but I can't find your location. Let's do the basics first. I'll use Houston, Texas as the main example here, as I have a high gun to population ratio. Its frame, which is mostly flat, is 2.31 million people, has expansive layouts throughout the entire city, with layered ring roads such as the I-610 or the Beltway A, and also has a more increased military presence compared to other cities, with things like the EFD having around 1,873 military personnel. I'm also going to assume it's hour 2 of the invasion and that all the things that happened in my OG vid, well, happened. You can watch that vid right after this, by the way, such as all ICBMs being fired at the Combine, and, more importantly for this scenario, all civilians globally are told via broadcast and more not to shelter in place or evacuate, but to instead try forming militias / joining the city defence. Looking back on it now, I realise this would probably go pretty badly. While it's very unlikely people would start panicking or losing on a mass scale, as even though Hollywood might have you thinking people will lose their shit over any small event, studies of disasters like 9/11 shows most people behave civilly and follow authority, and that mass panic is rarely seen in emergencies. But at the same time, my estimation of 40 to 60% of the population being in city defence groups is straight up impossible in a big city. So I did some research both in Houston and asked some very reliable sources, and I figured out of a 2.31 million population, about 5 to 15% would be in city defence groups over 2 to 4 hours, with most other people sheltering in place and a minority attempting to flee or loot. We also have to take into consideration the Combine. Assuming that by the 4-hour mark about 6 trillion Combine is spread out on Earth, the amount that hits Houston and other cities alike could wildly vary. A conservative amount would be 30 billion, 0.5% of the Combine attacking, but this could also be something like 300 billion. We'll assume 30 billion just to give a smidge of a chance. Now, this is hypothetical, but at least 70% of the Combine had to have been light, expendable soldiers of some kind, 21 billion. 10% of Striders and other light vehicles, 3 billion. 12% is heavy arm and possibly some sort of artillery, 3.6 billion. 8% is a mixture of air units, 2.4 billion, and that'll be 100% from forces coming at Houston. There might also be more negligible amounts of intelligent units like advisors. I'll also assume there's no navy and no orbital bombardment. Now, that's a massive amount of units, I know. Let's see how the human side fares. This is more difficult to estimate, but the local military around Houston, Texas, including Ellington Base Reserve and National Guard elements, should be around 20,000 personnel. There's around 5,000 police. If 15% of the able-bodied civilians in Houston, Texas join the defence, that's around 346,500 extra people. Also, to make it slightly more fair, I'll assume there's around 100k military personnel from around the city that join in the coming hours. So, the total defenders are 471 and 500 personnel in total. We'll also assume around 2,700 tanks, 10,000 IFVs/APCs, 500 artillery, mortar plus howitzers, 250 helicopters, attack and transport mix, and 62 AA guns are involved. You might think that they are completely fucked, but keep in mind that the Combine can't just flood in 30 billion all at once due to logistics. They would likely come in waves, something like 9 to 30 million every hour. Also, the city would—
Hey, can you just get to the scenario, bro? We get the talking and stuff, but I'm trying to see how them Texans be finding them aliens.
Okay. Scenario: 20 minutes have passed since the Combine invasion and the global broadcast from General Dickus is sent to the militaries and governments, start full mobilisation, coordinate defences, prepare civilians for combat roles, etc etc. For civilians globally via emergency broadcasts, shelter in place, do not attempt to flee or evacuate without explicit permission, and, if possible, join your official city defences, and so on. Governor Rick Perry, who was in charge of Texas during 2003, would immediately declare a state of emergency and martial law, along with the mobilization of all military presence. In Houston, Lee P. Brown, yeah, that's a real person, would probably go live with urgent broadcasts repeating state and local orders like a possible local curfew or a shelter order. There will be designated defense zones in downtown Houston, Energy Corridor, NRG Stadium, and Astrodome. There might also be limited evacuations in open suburbs at most at risk of a combine attack. City police will be working to prevent riots, clear roads for military logistics along with the National Guard, and provide relief to civilians if needed. All air superiority fighters will be scrambled to patrol around Houston, along with long-range SAMs and AA guns to deny the combine uncontested airspace. Armoured units and mechanised infantry will be entrenched along the outer beltways like the I-610 loop and Sam Houston Tollway. Also in the secondary lines in the cities and natural barriers like Buffalo Bay Out, the Houston Ship Channel, and more. Bridges and overpasses will be rigged with explosives for demolition. Streets downtown will be blocked with trucks, sandbags, barbed wire, equipment, and more. Rooftops will be repurposed for snipers and AA guns. By the 4-hour mark, the combined forces will be approaching from southern West Texas to Houston. I'll have to give a more general description of the events that are likely to unfold, since it will take way too long to animate small details on CapCut Mobile.
All autonomous units. Except
The battle would begin with a few hundred thousand, 100k to 500k combined aircraft, most air to ground, approaching Houston from the southwest. They would be immediately engaged by a few hundred aircraft plus helicopters, including those that were already engaging before Houston was involved, along with dozens of long-range SAMs and hundreds of smaller AA guns across the city. If we're extremely generous, they would potentially shoot down a few thousand to tens of thousands of air units. The professional mechanised army, along with its armed support, along with artillery and possibly air support, would clash with the first waves of Combine. This would provide critical time to further reinforce the city. Obviously, with the overwhelming Combine air superiority and millions of Combines slamming to the outer defences, the armies would be forced to withdraw into the city, destroying critical infrastructure along the way to slow down the Combine. As the Combine keep approaching to the city and even possibly surround it, they would first have to penetrate the city's borders and defences. Inside, the hundreds of thousands of remaining defenders, along with any armour left, would be forced to fight tooth and nail inside the urban streets as to avoid Combine air attacks. The undertrained militia would make up the bulk of the forces by now and would be led by surviving commanders to reinforce static defences along the lines. Combine units, at least the expendable ones, would be killed by the millions from brutal battles along the choke points, kill zones, fortified areas, and bayous as the water would make mobility difficult. Some waves would be repelled and destroyed, some would break further into the city, but regardless, more and more would keep coming in by the minutes or hours. Combine air superiority would now be more or less uncontested and would rain hell on the defenders. Further in the city, the Combine, while still having a massive advantage, would have an insanely difficult time getting even a fraction of its ground units into the city due to all the bombing and destruction. But eventually, all outer defences would be breached. The fighting would start slowly devolving from a professional centralised defence. Hey, Future Power Up General here. About 2 minutes of footage has been corrupted and my deadline for this video is October 10th, so to boil down the remaining video, we would fucking lose. Hard. Animating these vids takes a long time. This one took about 2 months, so it would greatly help if you click that like button, subbed, shit, if you're feeling whimsical, maybe even a hype, who knew? Wow, holy sorry. Who knows? As this channel grows and we get monetized, might even be able to hire professional editors and more to make better bangers, right?